In the shadowed underbelly of a decaying Earth, Nikola clawed his way into the ranks of the Cartel of Rocks, a merciless syndicate of global monopolists and warlords who gripped the planet's dwindling resources with blood-stained hands. From their obsidian spire piercing the smog-choked skies above Geneva, the cartel enforced a brittle order, crushing dissent with a brutality that left bones shattered and hopes gutted. Nikola, a predator in their midst, ascended their hierarchy with a cold, surgical precision, his ambition a blade honed on betrayal and greed. Now he ruled a southern European province, his iron fist strangling the land to serve his own twisted ends. Neither less to say that Nicole is from a wealthy family of the Karwick. His empire was built on loyalty bought with gold and fear. Half his cadre were mercenaries, their allegiance secured by rivers of wealth that flowed from Nicola's coffers. The other half were his grotesque creations, slaves torn from distant star systems, their bodies broken and rebuilt into instruments of his will. On alien markets in places like Tau Ceti, he bartered for indentured laborers, a euphemism that cloaked the horror of his trade. Among them, he hand-picked the young, their spirits unbowed but bodies ripe for his experiments. Two rose above the rest, Fura and Zara, girls forged in the crucible of his cruelty. Their flesh was laced with cybernetic implants, their sinews hardened through relentless combat training in a world that devoured the weak. When Nikola first laid eyes on them in the slave pits, he demanded of the traders, "Whose daughters are these? What bloodline do they carry?" The slavers, their eyes gleaming with avarice, shrugged. "Someone's daughters, stolen as countless others have been in these cursed millennia. No names, no lineage." Nikola approached the girls, his gaze piercing. "Where do you come from?" he asked, his voice a low growl. They pointed to a distant green orb in the void Nariman, a planet of whispers and shadows. Yet Nikola knew more than he let on. Deep in his gut, he sensed their truth. Descendants of a wealthy European dynasty, sent to Nariman by his own father to serve as spies for the Karwick family. That bloodline had been crushed by a rival faction, their legacy reduced to ash and chains. Nikola's lips curled into a cruel smile. Their past was his to exploit. His 4 lieutenants, Vender, Korsian, Terence, and Dorian, were bound to him by blood and time, their loyalty forged in childhood oaths and the promise of dominion. Sons of men who served the Karwicks before them, they were Nikola's iron spine, their devotion sealed in rituals of blood and blade. Together, they carved a fiefdom from the province's rotting corpse, where nanonarcotic labs pulsed with toxic life, weapon caches armed rogue militias, and slave markets thrived in the dark, their screams muffled by the hum of machinery. These lieutenants were Nikola's shadow, shaping him into the monster he'd become. They taught him the art of close-quarters slaughter, the secrets of navigating the cold void of space, and the forbidden knowledge of cubic cores, technology that could unmake worlds. They sent him to the nobility high city of Paris, to the academy, where he learned just enough to wield power without wasting time on sentiment. "You never know when you'll need to thread the needle through the black," they told him, their voices heavy with the weight of their own wars. For beyond their province, the Bolomers loomed, a vampiric clan cloaked in the guise of egalitarianism, their old Bolshevik rhetoric repackaged for a new age. They drained entire nations, leaving corpses in their wake, their hunger for power matched only by their savagery. Nikola's lieutenants prepared him for this eternal feud, knowing the Bolomers would stop at nothing to tear him down. Vender and Korsian orchestrated the resupply of Nikola's armada of starships, their hulls bristling with stolen tech. Terence and Dorian led raids, plundering goods and spilling blood to fuel the cartel's coffers. Fura and Zara, meanwhile, were twin blades in Nikola's arsenal, lethal in combat, silent as specters on spy missions, and ever-present at his side as bodyguards. Korsian, the intellect of the group, wove a web of intelligence, his eyes missing nothing. Yet every operation ended at the same blood oak table, where Nikola and his inner circle dissected their victories and planned their next atrocities, their voices low under the flickering light of a dying world. Chapter 2: War in South Europe. Nikola's empire swelled like a festering wound, built on the bones of plundered container ships and hijacked space freighters. His raids carved a bloody path through the stars, forcing neighboring territories to bend to his extortionate trade deals. But his ambition was a blade too sharp, cutting too deep. In the gilded halls of Paris, the central government seethed, their patience worn to a frayed thread. Whispers of treachery slithered through the shadows. Some factions within the cartel of rocks had forged a vile pact with the Bolomers, bribing the landlords of southern Europe to betray Nicolas, their knives gleaming with promised gold. In the war room, a crumbling chamber in Athens choked with the stench of sweat and fear, Nicolas sat with his lieutenants, his eyes burning like twin furnaces. "What happened to our intel, Fura? Zara?" he snarled, his voice a lash. The two cybernetic warriors, their faces etched with scars and steel, bowed their heads. "We're sorry, boss," Fura rasped, her voice a hollow echo of her former self. "The northern elites have gone silent. They've shut us out, refusing our coin and our blades." Zara's gaze was colder, her words clipped. "No information flows. The veins are cut." Nicolas turned to Dorian, his fingers drumming a rhythm of barely restrained violence. "What of the raids? Anything from the last haul?" Dorian's jaw tightened, his hands stained with the memory of blood. The captain was some nobody from China, working for a corp running liquid ionization tech. He didn't know who pulled his strings. The guards, Asians, hired muscle, knew even less. Useless. Nicolas' gaze snapped to Corsian, whose face was a mask of grim calculation. "And you, Corsian? What's Paris saying?" Corsian's voice was low, edged with dread. "They've cut ties, Nico. They want you out, resigned, erased from the game. They're moving to crush you. I'd listen if I were you." Nicolas' laugh was a jagged thing, sharp enough to cut. "Listen? To those filth, the shittiest dregs of Earth's rotting core? My hatred for them is a fire that'll burn this world to cinders." His intel was drying up, the lifeblood of his empire clotting in his hands. The Rocks and Bolomers, once rivals, now united in a grotesque alliance, their forces massing like a storm of blades. They struck from all sides, a tide of steel and plasma that drowned Nicolas' defenses. His armies fought with feral desperation, their blood soaking the earth, but it was futile. Even his Apocalypse-class atomic warheads, primed to unleash hell, were obliterated from orbit by the enemy's precision strikes, leaving only ash in their wake. At this point, Nicolas' rage boiled over, a primal force that demanded blood. He turned to Fura and Zara, his twin harbingers of death. "Take a ramming ship," he growled, his voice dripping with venom. "Infiltrate the government's headship. Slaughter everyone aboard. Leave no one breathing." The sisters nodded, their eyes glinting with a hunger for carnage. They boarded a sleek, black-hulled vessel, its prow a battering ram forged for destruction. Crashing through the headship's defenses, they tore into the central government's flagship like wolves among sheep. Blood sprayed across pristine corridors, bodies crumpled under their cybernetic fists, and screams were silenced by the wet snap of broken necks. Fura's blades carved through flesh like parchment, while Zara's plasma gauntlets burned through armor and bone. By the time they were done, the headship was a floating abattoir, its decks slick with gore, its crew reduced to mangled husks. This slaughter cracked open the window Nicolas needed, a fleeting gap in the enemy's resolve. The Earth government, staring into the abyss of their losses, entire fleets decimated, their flagship a tomb, faltered. They realized the cost of pursuing Nicolas would bleed them dry. His fortress on the Aegean, a jagged scar of stone and steel, stood as the last bastion of his crumbling empire. Cornered, Nicolas faced a grim choice: flee or be butchered. "The Bolomers have always been butchers," he spat, his voice heavy with defiance. "Since the 1900s, they've slain kings, raped nations, and left nothing but ruin. I'll not let my people, my blood, suffer that fate." He summoned his remaining ships, a battered fleet of loyalists and mercenaries, and forged a spearhead to punch through the enemy's lines in space. His lieutenants held the ground, their blades and cannons buying time with rivers of blood. Fura and Zara, drenched in the crimson of their massacre, led the charge, their ramming ship a blazing comet that tore through Balamer vessels. Nikola unleashed his final gambit, an energy weapon of apocalyptic design, its beam lancing through the heart of Europe, pulverizing swathes of land and turning Paris into a smoldering crater. The Earth government, faced with such catastrophic losses, relented, letting Nikola's fleet slip into the void. Bitter and seething, Nikola stood on the bridge of his flagship, his dreams of an earth-spanning empire reduced to ash. I wanted to unravel the secrets of the nobility, to wield power the earthlings could never fathom, he muttered, his fists clenched until his knuckles bled. But survival demanded adaptation. Over the fleet's comms, he roared to his followers, I'm grateful you stand with me to the end. Don't lose hope, we have allies yet, and will live as kings still. We set course for the Wenden system, a pirate's paradise where even the Xerians fear to tread. There we own land, vast estates. We'll build anew. His words, laced with fire, sparked a flicker of hope in his battered crew. Let us rise from the ashes, he declared, his voice a blade cutting through despair as the stars beckoned. Chapter 3: Exile in the Wenden System. Nikola's fleet limped into the Wenden System, a lawless haven where humans, aliens, and rogue AIs mingled in a cauldron of vice and violence. His old cartel connections, forged in blood and betrayal, secured him sanctuary among the stars. On a planet scarred by the earth like vegetation and steel, he claimed vast estates he'd long owned, pouring his remaining wealth into a fortress of immense proportions. He even had plans for an big Colossus arena. With his loyal lieutenants and his iron enforcers Fura and Zara by his side, Nikola began to rebuild. The loss of his earthly throne gnawed at him, a bitter shard lodged in his heart. But he was a predator, and predators adapt. It is not the strongest who survive but the one who adapt the fastest, Nikolai often repeated. Fura and Zara, once mere slaves, had proven their worth in blood. Nikola elevated them to lieutenants, their combat prowess and spacefaring knowledge now honed for command. They would lead alongside his veterans, their loyalty a rare constant in a world of treachery. Yet a shadow lingered. How had the Earth government pierced his inner circle so deeply? How had they known his every move, his hidden ships, his secret lairs? The question festered, a wound that refused to close. In Wenden's chaotic sprawl, Nikola thrived. He paid the local rulers a fortune in money, earning a seat at their table, also because of his contribution to the planet economy and building up social programs. Nikolai knows how to win the people for himself. The pirate lords, a motley cabal of warlords and outcasts, ruled this system with fists of iron and fleets of stolen ships. Among them were half-faced Craig, a human, his visage a mangled ruin. Thus the noble, a former captain cloaked in faded honor. Red Damon, a hulking magnar in crimson armor, and Black Hand, a Xerianer whose shadowed form reeked of death. It is said he is the strongest of them all. Their meeting hall, a cavernous dome pulsing with holographic star charts, was a place where alliances were forged and liquidations are planned. Murders and raids were common, but the Lord's enforcers, armed to the teeth, kept the chaos in check. Nikola strode into the hall, 2 new lieutenants at his back. "Good morning, my lords," he said, his voice smooth as a blade's edge. "Since my arrival, I've built a stronghold, poured wealth into this planet, and armed its forces. I've raised a starfleet to join your ranks. Also, I started social programs for the poor." Genthus's eyes narrowed, assessing. "You've done well, Nikolai, these past 2 years. Your 7 lieutenants command fleets with precision." Black Hand's voice slithered through the air. "But do you trust them?" Nikola's jaw tightened. "They're my family," he said, the word heavy with conviction. Red Damon's voice boomed, shaking the hall. "To join us, Nikolai, you must trust your own. We pirate lords stand together, or we fall to the outer powers. That's why I can trust all of my fellow companions." As this was a sign for Craig, half-faced Craig tapped his device. A holographic archive flaring to life, marked top secret, Earth government. "Look here, Nikolai," he rasped. "Ever wonder why Paris crushed you so easily? Why they knew your every move?" The archive revealed a damning truth. Corsian, his trusted lieutenant, had met with Earth agents in Paris, brokering a deal to seize Nicolas' empire and split the spoils. Nicolas' blood ran cold as he scanned the room. His face color left him in a white face. "You know what you need to do," in a calmy voice from the universal translator. Blaghand doesn't say much, but then it's the important one. His face a mask of pale fury, Nikola summoned his lieutenants to a meeting, framing it as a discussion of new operations. In the dimly lit chamber, surrounded by the hum of machinery, he revealed the intel. "We have a traitor," he snarled, pointing at Korsian. The man sat motionless, his cold eyes unyielding. "What say you, Korsian? Did you conspire with Paris to steal my empire?" Korsian's voice was a low hiss. "Yes, Karwick. I wanted my share for all I've given you. I lost a son in your service, bled for your family, built your empire. The drugs, the slaves, the massacres, we did horrors together. I thought to save them, to free them from your madness. And that apocalypse bomb? I gave Paris the coordinates to stop it before you burned the world." The room froze, the air thick with betrayal. Nicolas' rage erupted. A feeling of betrayal touched him. He lunged, his levitation device humming as he seized Korsian, his energy blade igniting. With a scream of fury, he sliced through Korsian's arms, blood spraying like crimson rain. Another slash severed his legs, the wet crunch of bone echoing in the silence. Korsian's screams were guttural, a raw howl of agony that shook the walls as his mangled body collapsed, blood pooling beneath him. "Patch him up," Nikolas spat, his voice trembling with barely contained wrath. "I forgot myself. I didn't mean to use such techniques." But mercy was a lie. Once Korsian was crudely stitched together, his wounds still weeping, Nikola ordered his crucifixion. In Wenden's central square, under a blue sky, Korsian was hoisted onto a jagged metal cross. His screams tore through the air as spikes were driven through his wrists and ankles, blood streaming in rivulets down the frame. The crowd watched, silent, as his tongue was cut out, a final act of savagery that left him choking on his own blood, his muted cries a wet gurgle. Left to rot, his body became a warning, a grotesque monument to Nicolas' wrath. Nikola returned to the pirate lord's hall, his hands still stained with Korsian's blood. Half-faced Craig nodded, his ruined face twisting into a grin. "You did what you must, Nikolai," rooting out the traitor. Jen thus leaned forward, his voice low. "Welcome to our table, son of Karwick. You can finally understand how hard it is to lead. The crown waits hard on the head. But now you are one of us, and we will treat you as one of ours." Blackhand pressed a device into Nicolas' hand, inking his skin with a glowing tattoo, a mark of their order and a tool for their secret coordination. "Now you'll always have a seat here," Red Damon rumbled, as the hall's shadows swallowed Nicolas, now a full member of the pirate lords of Wenden. Finally back at a power throne. Here he can plan his revenge on Rox and Bolomers. No mercy will be given. They didn't show it to me.
Hello everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Battle of Eden. In this one I took a deep dive into the life of Nicolas Karwick. As you might have guessed, he will be a feature in the game, so stay tuned for the next episode.